Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about our aim. How can we create a defining moment? So you're due now. I want you to quickly write down in front of you, what is a defining moment? Write down as much as you remember. So a defining moment is a point where you risk something, learn something, grow, take action, or persevere. Some defining moments we've looked at is when the boy in the snack shack chased after the robber, when Mr. Lubing put out the fire when he was babysitting, when the person in the Broadened Horizon ordered a muffin for the first time in a bakery in France. So we've learned at this point what a successful college essay needs. We've also talked about in our lessons the difference between experiences, moments, and defining moments. And you've picked a few defining moments in your life to think about. Today, you're going to tell your defining moment story out loud to get more ideas and hear what your natural voice is. So, voice. What should the voice of your personal statement sound like? The most successful personal statements sound like people who wrote them. The voice is consistent even during a student interview. Your personal statement needs to sound like you. It's not an essay where you're saying, in this paragraph, I'm talking about this. In this paragraph, I'm talking about this. We want it to sound like you both on and off the paper. So we want you to tell your story out loud today to capture your voice, to hear what you sound like, and to give you more ideas to work with as you move forward. So a few goals for today. You're going to brainstorm different stories that you can tell about yourself. We all have different stories, so it's a matter of just finding the best story that you want to show and you want to tell about you. You're also going to tell your story out loud. Again, we do this to build a connection with the person that we're listening to, that's listening to our story, and also to get new ideas. You're going to get suggestions, feedback, and comments from your mentor. Your mentor is going to help you through this process. It helps to get someone else's opinion and see what they have to say about what you're telling. You want to bring out your voice, which we want to bring your story to life. Make it sound like you. This should not be very formal. It should sound like you. And we want everyone to get into the best college that they can. And one way to do that is to write a personal statement that really tells a lot about you and makes them want to accept you into their college. Your guidelines for the story. When you're doing your story, it has to be in your own voice. It should sound like you. Your moment should have happened recently. We want to hear about things that have happened in the last 3 to 4 years because you remember them well. We don't want to hear about when you were 5 years old and you fell and got hurt, right? That was too long in the past. Your story should be about you. At the end of the day, we should know a lot more about you as a person, and it should show you in a positive light and a change that has occurred. So make sure that your essay at the end is positive. It says something very positive about you. So before you begin this activity, we want you to think about what makes a good story. Good stories always need 3 things: a magnet, a pivot, and a glow. A magnet is what draws the audience in at the start of the story. What grabs their attention and hooks them in, makes them want to keep listening. Your pivot. What is the defining moment where something changes? The pivot is your defining moment. And the glow, what details show the change or leave something for the reader to remember you by? You want to leave the reader thinking about you and what happened to you. So in this next activity, what you're going to do is complete this worksheet before you talk to your mentor. So complete defining moment 1, 2, and 3. We want you to think about 3 defining moments in your life that you might want to write about for your college essay. Then once you're done, you're going to share at least 2 of those defining moments with your mentor. So the first part is defining moment 1. So for my life, right, one defining moment for me was being caught in a rip current at the beach. All right. So now I want to think about my magnet. What's going to draw the reader into the story and make them want to keep listening? So when I think about being caught in a rip current at the beach, this was a big moment for me, and really, changed my way of seeing things. And I remember I was on vacation with my family, and it had stormed for 2 days. But finally, the weather started to get nice. So I raced down to the beach because I was dying. I wanted to swim. And I remember my mom yelling to me and my brothers and sisters, "Be careful. The water's really rough." Right? So just in 1 to 2 sentences quickly, what's going to grab people in? And then the point where something changes, you risk something. I was splashing in the water, and the next thing I know, the water is pulling me away from the beach. I panicked. I was kicking and swimming, trying to not drown. All right. And then completes the action, leaves the readers with something to remember and make them want to know more about me. As I sat on the shore, or finally, I was on the beach again with lifeguards all around me. I was breathing really heavily. It took, as I was staring out into the ocean. All right, so that would be my first story. Just getting some ideas about what's going to draw people in, what was the big moment for me, my defining moment, and glow. Right. Finally, I was on the beach again with lifeguards all around me, breathing heavily as I was staring into the ocean. I'm going to leave this mentor share for now. Then I'm going to go to my defining moment 2. Another defining moment in my life was when I was babysitting. Babysitting neighbors for first time, and Mikey had a bad cut on his face. Right? So what's going to draw the reader in? So like I said, this was my first time babysitting my neighbors, 2 kids, and I was super excited because I had been waiting the whole year to do this. And the point where something changes during hide and seek, I heard a huge bang and scream. And when I ran to see Mickey and his sister, Mickey's face was covered in blood, and he was screaming and holding his eye. And complete the action, leave something for the reader to remember. I thought about calling 911, but quickly decided to call my mom as I held a paper towel over Mickey's. So that's another moment in my life, right? So these 3 things, it's like a 3-sentence story. You're breaking down your story into 3 little chunks: the magnet, what's grabbing your attention, what's the point that changes everything, your defining moment, and what's kind of the last thing you want to leave us with. Then I would brainstorm one more moment in my life and complete the same thing. So now at this point, you've come up with your 3 defining moments and you've written the magnet, pivot, and glow for each. So the next part is to share at least 2 of your defining moment stories with your mentor and take notes in the mentor section below each activity. So if I decide I want to share my defining moment number 1 with my mentor, I'm going to tell my mentor that as I'm sharing my story with them, and this should be done over the phone, talking to each other, you want your mentor to think about these questions. So, what was your favorite moment or moments in my story? What do you want to know more about after hearing my story? And were you confused by anything or said, or have any other comments about my story? So you kind of want to tell your mentor this before, like, I want you to give me feedback on these things before you start telling them your story. All right. And then you would tell your story. So if I decide that I'm going to talk about my defining moment number 1, being caught in a rip current at the beach, I would tell my mentor this story. So, for example, about 3 years ago, my family and I were on vacation down at the beach, and it stormed and rained, thundered and lightning for like 2 days. It was terrible. So we were stuck inside this house playing games. Finally, the weather started to get nice. And my brother, sister, and I were so excited that we could finally go swimming in the ocean because we had waited all, week for this. So we got ready to go to the beach. And as we were walking to the beach, my mom was screaming at us because we were running ahead of her. Be careful, the water's really rough. And we kind of just ignored her, brushed her off. We weren't listening, and we just kept running to the beach. So when we finally got there, we threw our, towels down, our toys down, and we ran into the water. The water was pretty rough. There was the waves were pretty big, pushing us here and there. But we were just so excited, we didn't really care. And then there were yellow flags because it was rough, the water, but we were just being careful. But then the next thing I know, I'm in the water and it's pulling me out, and the current is so strong I can't get away. So the water is just taking me out further and further into the ocean, and I was freaking out. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to do. I had a moment of oh my God, I'm gonna die. But then I remembered I took this lifeguard class when I was younger a few years ago, and they said if you ever get caught in a current, just let it kind of take you. So I remembered that, and I let it kind of take me, and I was being taken further and further out to sea. And then at one point I felt like I could swim away. So I started swimming a little bit away, and I got away. But then I quickly saw right around me were 3 lifeguards on surfboards trying to help me get out of this. And I finally saw a lifeguard they grabbed me and they swam me back to shore. And when I was on shore, they were asking me all these questions. Are you okay? Any trouble breathing? This and that. I was freaking out, pretty much in shock and oh my God, what just happened? My brother and sister were around me and my parents at this point, but it was a pretty terrifying experience. But the next day I was back in the water again, swimming, because I love the ocean and I was alive. So I was really happy. So after I share my story, I'm going to ask my mentor, what was your favorite moment in my story? So maybe they say their favorite moment was when I went back in the ocean the next day, right? So just take quick notes on what they say here. Then when you're done, share one more story with them in the same format, and you're going to fill in the notes at the bottom. So after you've shared your 2 stories with your mentor, just want you to take a quick minute and answer these questions. What was it like to tell your story out loud? And what did you learn from this activity? Just quickly answer those. All right, if you have any questions, please let us know, and good luck and have fun with this. Bye.